Hello and welcome. Hopefully we're live and people
Hello
can
and
hear
welcome.
us.
Hopefully,
Welcome to episode 2 of Tavern Talk, Internet Friends. I am Metamongoose, also known as Ben, over on the CritCats Discord. I think I said that backwards from the last time, but it's been like a month. Anyway, with me today is Sasha and Fia. They will be helping us design a dungeon, but in a fun way, a draftable, collaborative way. For those of you who are unfamiliar with designing dungeons, maybe this is your first time. Maybe you want to get started on you've done some D&D before, and have done some published dungeons or found one online that was kind of cool, but didn't quite know what to do with just a map. We're gonna walk you through kind of the basics of how to make a dungeon map into a full-fledged adventuring dungeon. But instead of doing it all as one person, we're going to do it as 3 people because, it's more fun to do it as a group. So, there is a way we're going to do this, and it's going to be drafting the choices of how to make a dungeon. Now, when you make a dungeon, it generally helps to answer 5 major questions, and they're the basics: your who's, your what's, your when's, your where's, and your why's. And we'll show you kind of how you can kind of line all those up into a kind of document that you can answer. So in the middle of the screen here, I'm going to switch over to my Word document, not my dungeon map. Does my Word document go away for some reason? There we go. All right. So on here we've got 10 questions. Arguably it could be more or less, as long as you have the 5 main things covered. But we're gonna discuss things like where your dungeon is, kind of where it exists in your timeline. Maybe it's a new dungeon created by somebody. Maybe it's been around for a while. And somebody has moved in recently after it had been cleared out or abandoned for a length of time. Fun things about old dungeons: there may be things in them that the current occupants don't know about. Fun secrets left unfound that the party can stumble across for whatever reason. We can talk about the who's, your specific NPCs, your big bads, your random helpers, your neutral third parties that may be inhabiting the dungeon for whatever reason. Then your various whatses, monsters, traps, puzzles that inhabit your dungeon. Also, what specifically do the inhabitants want? Like they came here to inhabit a dungeon for a reason. You don't just move into a dungeon because it's there. Unless you do, maybe their wants are very, very minimalistic, depending on what's living there. Also, what is the main treasure of note that can be acquired? There can be other treasures that we can assign to the various smaller who's and what's in the dungeon, but the main reason you go in adventuring toward a dungeon is because there's probably some treasure down there for whatever reason, and what it is would be nice to know. And also the why, of course, why the players are going. This could be to find that that main treasure of note. That could be to find that who, the big bad, or maybe the neutral or good party that they have acquired or trapped there with the big bad. Things like that. So with that basic information kind of lined out, what I think we'll do is, because this is a D&D stream and we all have dice, we're going to roll a d20, and we're going to just highest to lowest will be turn order. And when it's your turn, just you see the 10 questions, pick one that you like, and then we'll move to the next until they're all picked. This does mean that the third person on the list arguably, or the first person on the list? The first person on the list arguably gets a 4th pick if they want it. But once we're all picked, we'll just in turn order from 1 to 10, go down, and whatever it is you picked, you get to elaborate on, and I'll bring up the dungeon map so you can kind of see what we're playing with. Does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds great.
All right. D20 rolls. I got a 9.
I also got a 9.
Okay.
I got a 15.
Okay.
We'll reroll.
So the 9s reroll. I got an 11.
I got a 6.
Okay. So, Sasha, you will be leading us off. I will be second.
Great.
And Fia will be third in the picking order. So, of this list of 10 questions, which is the most burning one that you want to definitely claim being able to answer for our dungeon?
We'll, puzzle stuff. We'll go with that.
So you want do you want pick 4, 5, 6, or 7 for the puzzle stuff? It will determine if people get to answer these questions before you do. So
I pick between 4 through 7?
Yes.
We'll go with 6.
6. All right, we'll put Sasha on 6. I will take. You know what? I'll take number 1. I'll take where our dungeon is located. Fia?
I think I'm gonna take number 3.
Number 3. Who? That's a good one. That may set the tone for a lot of the dungeon. Sasha?
Sure.
I'm
not sure what to pick. I'm not sure what to pick.
So many choices.
I know, that's why. And me, who's the problem of making decisions, is really hard. So what are my choices again?
Current choices are when. So when the dungeon was originally created, or when did the current inhabitants move in. There are still 3 more of the pick a random monster, trap, or puzzle to inhabit the dungeon. You've currently got 1 of the 4, so there are 3 left of those. And then there's the what do the inhabitants want? What have they done? And then what is the main treasure? And then why are the players' characters going into the dungeon?
I'll go ahead and pick the when.
The when. Okay. You have been added to that one. I will take the first who or what, so I can pick a monster, trap, or puzzle to inhabit the dungeon. Most likely one of the first minions of the big bad, whatever that may be. We will find out eventually. Fia? We still have 2 who's or what's. What do the inhabitants of the dungeon want, and what have they done? Or what is the treasure, or why they're there? Why are the PCs going there? Basically the plot hook. 10 is basically pick up the plot hook.
I think I'm gonna I feel kind of obligated to pick up another one of the who/whats for monster trapper puzzles.
Do you want the second one or the 4th one?
I think I'll take the 4th.
All right. Some monster selection strategy going on here. That brings us back to Sasha. We have a monster, trap, or puzzle pick. What the inhabitants of the dungeon want, and what they have done. what the treasure is, or the plot hook, why the players are there?
I'll go with the why.
All right, Sasha has chosen the plot hook. I think that means I will take the main treasure. That leaves us with a who, what, monster, or trap, or puzzle pick, and a what the inhabitants of the dungeon want or what they have done. So, Fia, which of those two strike your fancy?
I'm gonna snag number 8.
All right. So, choosing what do the inhabitants want? That means, Sasha, that you get another dungeon monster, trap, or puzzle pick.
Let's.
And that round, well, that's the last pick. You get it by default. So now that the picks have all been selected, let us look at our map real quick, and I will post, as promised, an image of the map for you two in the Discord, so you can get a bigger picture of it to kind of peruse, because the screen does not allow for the map in its fullest of glories, unfortunately. But this is the map we will be using this evening.
Yeah.
So consider it. See what is available. What interesting things excite you about it. And then while you're doing that, I will lead us off with our question of where the dungeon is located and how does the environment outside affect the inside of the dungeon. And I think that our dungeon is located in a kind of deserty scrubland environment. Kind of a, maybe even like a salt flats, where the ground is very prone to sinkholes. A lot of the interior of this dungeon kind of reminds me of what used to maybe be like a cavern that's been kind of worn away by acidic salt acid, in, you know, like concentrated salt water, acidic style. And the top corner of the map, where there is a kind of gouge in the upper layer that leads down into the dungeon proper, may be the actual entrance, the main entrance of the dungeon. Maybe the original entrance was lost long ago, and because of a salt flat sinkhole, a new opening has brought what was once stale air up into the fresh of the outside. So that will be the where. We're in some kind of a scrubland, salt flat area. Lots of like encrusted salt columns, and this sinkhole has opened up, revealing this lost dungeon, or dungeon that has been hidden from view from most people for however long. But it's here now. And that brings us to our when, which is Sasha's call. When this dungeon was originally created, and when its current inhabitants moved in.
We will go. So okay. So it's 2 separate wins. Got it.
It's kind of the same. Like, you could be like, it was made recently by the current owners because they're the only owners. or you could be like, it's really old, and these new people moved in.
So I have this feel that it was like a dried up ocean that developed into this, but that's what my brain feels when like with your description and stuff. But anyways, so we're gonna say that it was built by some kind of ancient civilization long time ago, and a more recent group or whoever decided to, they found it and they went into it, probably something that came from that area of where the entrance is, and then just kind of inhabited it from there.
Okay, so go over that again real quick for me. So it was originally created by like natural forces.
No, ancient, some ancient beings a long time ago made it, and then it was abandoned or something happened inside of it, and later on, like say a couple hundred years later, another group had found it and took over it.
All right, so created by ancients for some unknown reason. But we could work that out. We have various trap, puzzle, or monster picks that may potentially point toward this unknowable reason.
Yeah.
And it was recently resettled within the last few years, months.
Well, I don't know the time frame. Like, would it be?
It could be. I mean, it could be sealed up for hundreds of years, for all we know. It's your choice.
The ancient thing happens, and then a couple centuries or so later, someone else shows up, and they go, "Oh, well, I didn't know this was here. Well, this is ours now," and then just takes over.
All right. So recently resettled after, say, 200 years.
Yeah.
All right. Fia, you are next. You get to describe to us the significant NPC of the dungeon, the big bad, or a good or neutral party that may be down here as well. Paint us a picture, I guess.
Cool. So I don't know about this place being like the big bad stronghold. I was kind of feeling more like this is a place where maybe a lot of exposition can occur, a lot of story could be told about who the eventual big bad could be. But maybe this is not where they are definitively located, but one of their many places.
Sure. And when I say big bad, I don't mean like the biggest bad. It could be like the mini boss of the adventure or whatever.
Ah. Well.
Just the big bad of this location.
I suppose it helps that I gave myself options then. So in this particular location, then perhaps some, like in the depths, there are some acolytes of some kind of like wicked cult that worships something about these caves or this desert environment that wishes to do harm to those on the surface. Just like a group of people who wish to do terrible things. Pretty classy as far as D&D dungeons can go. But just, I don't know, maybe they worship worms or something.
WORM? Dark worm knowledge? Maybe. I mean,
there is nothing more wicked in this world than a worm.
I agree. Agree. Just making sure we're doing WORM, not URM or YRM. No. Actual worm. Got it.
Just big old Alaskan
Squigglies.
bullworms.
Squigglies.
Exactly. Just wiggly fellows.
All right, and they have come to this lost place, seeking the ancient worm lore.
The sacred
The sacred worm lore.
texts that have been mostly consumed by worms. Funny enough,
The sacred squiggle text.
barely legible. You see all these
I
smears
did in
across
fact
paper.
write
What do
down
they mean?
sacred squiggle text, just so you know. That will come up later.
It's very important.
At least it's not the ancient chicken scratch. Ah.
All right.
Another equally fearsome primordial being.
So, how? Just out of curiosity, cultists is a collective, but for like leadership purposes, are we talking like a triad or
Uh,
a pair or like because
This is
your
more-
adventurers are eventually maybe going to have to fight them or they're going to flee or something. So how many of the like boss level cultists are we talking about? Upper
I would
middle
imagine-
management.
upper middle. I would imagine probably only about one or two of people who are like definitively in charge, who are considered to be superior or more powerful than the rest. But generally speaking, I would imagine there's a lot of like group combat involved with this one, where there's a lot of targets involved.
All right.
And a fun alternative to that would have been to throw in some kooky old traveler who fell in the sinkhole at one point by whoopsie daisies.
Well, I mean, you have that power. You have the good or neutral NPC that may also just be lost down here.
I think the way that I've written this person out, perhaps a little bit less good or neutral than they had been. They've definitely lost their mind down here a bit. And I imagine they're willing to misinform the party of what dangers lie ahead, or even are willing to go so far as to actively sabotage them, if it means that they themselves have a chance of getting out of this place.
Okay. So there is here, let me add that there is a secondary good party of sorts. I put
Good party in air quotes.
Yeah, good party in air quotes. A random traveler of sorts.
Yeah.
Crazy traveler. Just trying to get out. Potentially helpful, potentially not. Who could say? All right. So the next pick falls to me. It will be one of the first monsters, puzzles, or traps of the dungeon. I think now a long time ago, when I was reading through some like old like dungeon magazines, there was an adventure that I read that brought to me a very interesting aberration. It was and I can only say this with the most airiest of quotes, the majestic flumph. For those of you unfamiliar with the flumph, it is effectively a pancake with eyeballs on stalks out the top of it, and a weird crystalline formation and tentacles beneath it, and it floats around and basically eats thoughts. Or at least psychic energy from thoughts. You get to keep your thoughts, but the psychic energy generated from thoughts, it consumes. But that's not the only thing it consumes. Or at least, well, I guess now in the 5th edition era, that was kind of a thing. But back in the 2nd Ed era, the reason that this flumph was part of the adventure was that he and his family were big on eating salt from salt mines, and there were some salt mines, and the Flumps had been captured by an unscrupulous like merchant group that wanted them out of the mine so they could take over the salt mines and start making money again. And the party had to rescue the Flumps. But importantly, they're a bunch of salt-eating, flying pancake aberrations. And this being a area that we have turned into kind of a remnant of a salt flat space with a lot of like concentrated salt crystal hangings, and all of the water is kind of slightly salty, acidic. I think they would be an interesting monster. They're not high up. They're like 1/8 challenge rating, and arguably they're listed as lawful good. But I mean, it doesn't really matter. People are, tenderly creatures just want to live their lives, and adventurers just want to, invade their space. So sometimes these things cross paths. But I like the idea of an early spot, maybe just down from the entrance. If you go down that like tube into the middle area. Just down from where the scar kind of opens up into the dungeon, there looks like there's a little lake there, in like the left side, left middle there, and I like the idea of having maybe a small group of Flumps that are really weird looking to the players, and they fit the area a little bit. Maybe they're a recent addition from the Underdark, because the Flumps do kind of hang out in the Underdark, and they've kind of worked their way here, or they have some connection as mildly ageless beings to the ancient worm worshippers, and their noodly appendages are all that remain from their time as the worshippers of the squiggly texts. So we'll work that out maybe, but I like the idea of having some like nice little low level weird things for the players to find. So I'll add a Flump family to the lineup.
Little Flumps.
No, like 2 or 3 adults and maybe 1 or 2 adolescents. Arguably they're about the same size, and they are theoretically lawful good. So the party, there could be a misunderstanding, and then maybe they could talk it out, and maybe they could become like weird allies. Maybe not. It just depends on giving the party some options of what they can do.
Right.
Microsoft Word, of course, does not like the word flump, but I don't care.
Just look at it like, you're not my real dad. You can't tell me.
Well, the Flumps don't like Microsoft Word.
Right.
I am picturing a very nuclear family of Flumps.
Maybe.
It's just like, maybe one of them has like a dad stash growing or something.
Potentially.
That would be amazing.
I like
June.
Flump
Maybe
names
2 of them
too.
have dad
I
stashes.
remember the Flump's name from that adventure too. It was Ulmoapop. And he was the dad
Pop,
Flump.
you say.
Right. That was the
I
best
love
part.
it.
He was the dad Flump, and his name was Ulmoapop.
Pop. I love that.
His real name is just Umura.
In true
Pop is just
D&D
what they
party
call.
fashion, they immediately threw that name out the window, and he became like Oompama Loompama Pop.
Naturally.
Naturally, because nobody says monsters and people's names correctly in D&D.
That was a specific character trait of one of my characters.
But anyway, maybe they know of the squiggly texts. Maybe they are carved somewhere here in this dungeon, and they've decided to stay and like take up this squiggly worm text religion. Who knows? But let us move on to the next who what pick. Sasha, would you like to pick out a monster, a trap, or a puzzle to inhabit the dungeon?
Let's go with a puzzle.
All right. So first off, where is your puzzle?
I'm
Um,
trying to like imagine which direction.
looking at the map, I see a couple of places that a puzzle would be a good call, and that would be maybe the room with like the double doors leading down to the sand pit with this weird centipede looking thing,
Yeah,
or
that would be a good spot for
the circular chamber on the other side with like all the squiggly text carved in the stone.
The ancient worm knowledge.
Right. Both of these seem like really good places for a puzzle to be, but if you want to stick one somewhere else, that's also fine.
I kind of like So like there's that one that's right before that sand pit with that creature looking thing.
Okay, so the double doors leading up to the little four clover area.
Yeah, and then there's also, you said that circle.
Yeah.
That's got that. Yeah, I see it.
So what kind of puzzle would lead, or what is the puzzle meant to do?
So I was thinking of it being a word style puzzle that have to do ancient squiggly text, where they would have to guess the right symbols. So that would actually probably be good in the circular room because they have to guess the right letters in that room in order for that central. I don't know. I know I see like.
Do they only have to use
stuff.
letters that don't have straight lines?
Yes. But they would use something there, and then like either a chest would pop open or something like that. But if they pick the wrong letter, which I want the letters to kind of like be on the floor, and if they pick the wrong letter, they'll break through the floor.
Oh, so it ties into the sinkhole of the salt flats kind of design.
Yep. For a better description, the way I can describe it is kind of when Indiana Jones goes out in The Last Crusade and he has to spell Jehovah.
Right.
And
but in Hebrew it does not begin with a J.
Yeah, it begins with an I. But yeah, it's pretty much, it's similar to that. So they have to kind of guess the right ones, and it will light up as they go. So,
And now you said there's a chest or reward that is granted.
Yeah, there'd be some kind of reward. So I would assume some kind of chest or
something
like that.
I'll claim that when I get to 9.
Yeah.
What the main treasure is, the reward for answering the squiggly puzzle.
That would be the puzzle where you have to guess the right letters. They have to match up, and then if you guess the wrong letter, you'll end up, it'll just falling under you. So
we have to spell out. Are we spelling out like a name, or do they try to have to? I like the idea of the squiggly text literally being you have to use letters that do not have angles. Like it has to be like S's, lowercase L's, O's,
and those would happen to spell a name. So and they'd be like
G, like lowercase G's.
In very rare circumstances, a lowercase W, but you got to really squint your eyes.
Right, it might be an M, so you're not sure.
But yeah, no, and then like in the end, it would actually spell a name. They'd be like, "Who spells their name like that?"
Well, some ancient worm
squiggly
deity. I don't know.
It's just a long, convoluted Latin word, but it translates to Greg.
But that would be a good idea, though, where it spells out like a deity that was there at one point. So I like that.
So some ancient worm god.
Yeah. Of the purple.
The purple variety of worm, yes.
Sluggaloth. Or no, I can't. No, I can't use T, because it has straight lines.
Sluggle. Sliss. Sliggle sliss.
Sluggle. The GH at the end. It's an O-U-G. It's an O-U-G-H.
Slagoose.
Maybe it's just sl with like 8 L's.
Just a bunch of lowercase L's.
Slagloos. Slagloos
Yeah, you can use C. C is just a. So.
Just a curve.
So yeah, you have to only use curved letters. No straight lines.
You might be able to squeeze by with an H in there, but you can definitely use P. So you can get away with F. You can get away with using F sounds.
Right. You just have to PH it,
true.
I guess.
Yeah, you could.
But you got to make those extra squiggly.
Right. Who writes in italics?
People who write in cursive.
Right.
That's who.
That's how you mess up new people, young folks. You're like, I have written this puzzle in cursive.
No, we'll never figure it out.
We'll never understand
unless we're in second grade.
Right.
The only time where it was considered
then
pertinent
we
for us
will
to know.
immediately forget this knowledge because we're typing now.
That would be funny if it was ancient language and it was just cursive.
The ancients left us an indecipherable script. Isn't this just cursive?
Cursive?
He's translated the sacred text.
It's the goof. Who still has a name like that?
One of the cultists is just an old English teacher. She's like, I can read this just fine.
You shall be our new prophet.
Corrects them with proper grammar all the time.
All right. So, Sasha, while you have chosen for us a puzzle, you have also picked the next who what. So you can add a monster, a trap, or another puzzle to the dungeon if you wish.
I don't know if I want to do another puzzle. Let's go with a monster. So there's that dead thing in there.
Well, is it dead?
Exactly. I was exactly thinking that.
Is it sleeping? Or is it just awake and hungry?
It could be that.
It's been 200 years. Nothing's said it.
It could be something that it's just left a shell of it, and there's something else inside of it.
Ooh. It's just filled with worms.
It was a worm battle armor.
Or maybe it's like the husk of a mother worm that perished to feed
That could be that
her
too.
children.
But I'm trying to think of what kind of monster would happily
Well,
let me just crawl into your skin and use it as a weapon.
A thing you may want to consider.
Yes.
The Mordenkainen's Tone of Foes and Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft have granted us the Star Spawn, which are essentially psychic worm monsters from the stars that inhabit people, or are just a mass of worms behind like a mask.
Let's just do that then. That sounds good.
I don't know if that there's a now. Granted, the Star Spawn larva mage, which if here, give me a second.
Sounds horrible.
Well, I mean, it is
horrifying.
It is.
The larva mage sounds horrifying.
Give me just one moment here.
It could tie into the kookiness of the NPC from earlier, where that's something that they're just terrified of becoming.
Yeah.
They're willing to do whatever it takes to stay away from that.
And they're slowly kind of getting mind controlled, so they're kind of fighting with themselves on it.
Ooh,
They're terrified of it,
So
but at the same time,
here's a
they want to
picture
serve
of the
it.
larva mage.
they seem crazy at
It
first,
is,
but they're the sanest one of
it
us
is
all.
it is just
Yes.
a it is just a mass of worms in a cloak and mask, and it casts magic at you until you're sad about it.
That's you're sad. That's fantastic.
It
Do know
specializes in depression and
Now-
antitherapy.
now do know that it is like a CR16 monster, but we could, scale that back a lot. Steal
Like
from
a
it.
baby larva mage.
Right. It's new.
It's hungry.
Right. Maybe it was
Mama
reduced.
left.
Maybe a long time ago it was one of its powers is return to worms. So when it is reduced to 0 hit points, it breaks apart into a swarm of insects, which is just a swarm of worms. So maybe it has been kind of subsisting as a worm swarm, using its weird psychic powers to manipulate the cultists come to seek the squiggly knowledge.
It could, and then it demands a sacrifice.
Right. But it's not maybe we're not using like its stat block, but maybe some of its powers. Like it has like a dominate monster power, but we could scale that back to like a charm person or like a crown of madness effect.
That's where the person that fell through, that's the neutral or good NPC, is like trying to fight. It's been trying to charm that NPC, and the NPC's been like fighting it, and it's terrified of it at the same time.
It has an Eldritch Bolt, which is effectively your Warlock's Eldritch Blast. So arguably, you could just have this husk shell of a creature with like worms kind of wriggling out of the holes, and every now and again it like shoots a laser at you or tries to dominate your brain.
That sounds wonderful and terrifying at the same time.
Every time I think of the cultists in the context of like the squiggly folk or the squiggly people, for whatever reason my brain is just conjuring up those inflatable dudes outside of car dealerships.
Yep.
Just how terrifying it would be is if you walk into a room and you see like 10 of
Flailing
those
inflatable
start dancing towards you.
They're just gliding across the ground. They have no feet. They're just gliding. With just the announcer voice, the wacky arm flailing inflatable tube man. Ah!
All right,
Sounds
so we've
great.
got the heavily edited Starspawn larva mage inhabiting the husk of an ancient dead monster.
Yes.
That's what we want down there at the very bottom.
Yes.
And we've determined the cultists kind of pay tribute to it. The Flumph maybe aren't comfortable completely with this whole larva mage thing, but they do like what these squiggly texts have to offer. So they're kind of not sure. They're around because there's salt here and that's tasty. There's good reading in the circular room. They don't have to walk on the floor because they float. So they don't have to worry about falling through the traps.
They don't like the neighbors, but this place has good schools.
Right,
so.
yeah. Like, there's some weird cultists here. They kind of don't bother us because we also have tentacles, so...
Inflatable tube.
That brings us to Fia, who has a monster trap or puzzle pick.
Honestly, I'm so happy that you guys both picked puzzles and monsters, because it makes me feel less repetitive for doing a trap.
Is it trap time?
It's trap time.
Let's do a trap.
So I picked a very classy trap considering the location.
Okay.
A lot of salt. Very unstable ground, I would imagine, because there would probably be a lot of separation of the sediment, and quite a good bit of that, especially considering the fact that this seems like a very complex cave system. There's a risk of cave-ins, and just maybe throw in like some floor that doesn't look like it should be safe, but for whatever reason,
So like
somehow it is.
like a salt crust that doesn't have support underneath it.
Exactly.
Like there was water there, and like a salt, like almost like ice has formed, but it's made of salt. So when the water drains away, the salt's still there.
Yeah, and it's like really fragile.
It's not load bearing at all.
Nope. So I feel like that would definitely suit this place pretty nicely. But I don't think we can put that way too deep because just structurally it does not make sense.
So
that
the area on like the upper right corner of the map, that like walk path, looks like it would be good. And there's a big weird crystal formation like in the top center. Do you see sticking out there? I imagine that is like some kind of like crazy like salt crystal of some kind.
Just like a very large column of salt.
Potentially with weird properties.
Ooh.
Weird wormy properties.
Weird wormy property.
Wormy is just going to be a very commonly used adjective here.
Yeah. All right, so we've got your. Is it now? These are your basic, like standard pit traps. Like you fall like 10 feet into a hole.
Yeah, if you're not careful about where you stand,
maybe
then...
some jagged edges at the bottom to almost like a spike trap, but but like naturally formed.
Yeah, maybe you fall on some like harmless, like actual regular worms that'll just like scoot away, but they are.
Have other people fallen through these before? Is there like some strange loot to be found in some of these?
Possibly.
Like a body and a trinket or two, or some kind of strange items?
I think that would probably be the case like further on in the dungeon, because if you're careful enough to avoid the ones at the very start, then you would have made it further along to hit the ones where you can't really avoid those as well.
All right.
And I imagine the DC would get higher as you go along, because for whatever reason, it's just harder to tell the further in you go.
I like it. It's a good use of the environment as a trap. Instead of like having someone physically make one, it just exists.
Yeah.
It's a dungeon hazard of sorts. And like I said, so when you're designing traps like this, one thing that you can either reward players for, or maybe like or to warn players, is they could potentially fall through the first one, but it not be that bad. It's only like it's not like a 10-foot pit with like razor sharp stalagmites at the bottom. It's like a little 5-foot drop, and then maybe like twist an ankle or something. But there may be a dead adventurer down here, and you're like, oh, this could be bad, and it could only get worse going forward. We should be more careful going down this hallway.
Yeah.
Or if they spot these, and you kind of go a few more forward, you can reward them by going, hey, you see up ahead where one has already been collapsed in, and when you peek in, you see that someone has died in that one, and there's treasure there. So now you maybe want to stop and explore that, or if you've got a cleric in the party, you could be like, hey, someone want to cast Speak with Dead on this weird corpse down here?
Yeah.
And then you could give them like some strange lore dump, like maybe this corpse has been here for 100+ years, or maybe it's a recent corpse from a random traveler that like the crazy one that's wandering around here. Maybe he lives with the Flumps.
Maybe
Or visits
maybe
the flumps.
maybe one of the corpses gives like the secret to avoiding capsizing, caving in any more of the traps, and it's something like I don't know, more a friggin' dune dance.
Something.
They dance
Dune.
weirdly across.
Dune dance. Yes.
Shuffle your way across the salt
It's
flat.
in the squiggly text.
Wiggle
We
wiggle
must
like a worm
dance.
across the floor. Distribute your weight evenly like a worm would.
Yes, we must perform the worm.
Upon your belly you must crawl across the floor. So as your weight isn't distributed on a single footstep.
Vibrations.
I'm totally
from your
doing that
body wiggling.
to a party at some point. We're doing this.
The entire concept is just to do hip hop through the dungeon.
Right. How do we get past this trap? We must wiggle like a worm across the floor.
Vibrations of you wiggling across the floor will open all of the doors.
Who designed
never-
this dungeon?
I've never been so glad that my first thought when seeing a cave has been worm.
Hey, this is how inspiration happens, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. The only one who knows how to do it is the bard.
I'm already
I
super
get it.
excited about this dungeon. This is definitely going in a one shot someday.
A speedrun version of doing the actual physical worm is just doing the flailing,
Oh,
like inflatable dude dance and just booking it.
That's the flying worm.
so
Acolytes of our
importantly,
people.
now that we have discovered that we have to worm our way across the dungeon's floors so as not to accidentally fall through the salt-encrusted pit traps. Yeah. I want to someday. I want a rogue to be like, how do I disable or avoid these traps? And I'm like, well, you can roll for it, and then he'll roll really good, and I'm like, you're gonna have to do the worm across the whole dungeon floor.
And someone else just looks and goes, I'm not doing the freaking worm, okay?
Like-
I'm not doing it.
Like the paladin in full play mail is like, I'm not doing the worm.
If I die, bro.
You cannot get me to do the worm.
That would be the paladin or like the fighter or barbarian.
Right.
You're not getting me to do this.
Oh, the barbarian
And, like, I
probably
could-
fine. Like,
I could literally see the party arguing over having to do this.
Meanwhile, the bard has already finished the path.
Yeah.
right? He's like,
It's
it's
just
not
like,
hard,
oh, yes,
guys. You just worm.
This isn't hard, man.
Why are you guys taking so long? It's not
Oh my
rocket
God.
science.
I remember
Worm
one time I was.
science.
Just activate your squiggly synergy and get going.
Right.
Don't worry, guys. It's just like being with an eel. Oh, what? It's like
Bard,
this is why we
Bard
don't
just
take
sitting at the
Bard.
other side, getting ready to play like worm music. It's like think squiggly thoughts, people.
Squiggly thoughts.
They start strumming some disco to get people moving.
Like you
All right.
want to wiggle your way in the ground.
So, Fia, we have constructed quite an interesting home here for a collection of cultists, maybe, two, maybe even three, depending on how these fights need to go. A small group of flump, a random traveler who is lost here, and a voracious pile of worms from the stars who demands something and is living in the corpse of a strange centipede-like demon deep in the bowels of this dungeon. And it falls
All the
to
worms
you...
that have descended upon us.
Huh?
Sorry. I'm sorry. Thinking back to worms from the stars. Just the solar worms hath descended
Yeah,
upon
right.
us.
Bad
yeah.
because my brain instantly went to like Spelljammer campaigns that I'm in and how we would run into this, and I hate it.
Right. The star spawn could be Spelljammer related. They came out before the Spelljammer book, but I would 100% believe them if they ran across in a Spelljammer game.
We just came across like a not Tatooine.
Yeah.
This
God,
is
no.
just Star Wars.
Yeah,
This is just a really squiggly Star Wars.
Very squiggly Star Wars.
Squiggly Star
Are these worms using the Force? Well,
Well,
yeah,
There
yes.
was an
Uses magic
amalgamation of worm spawn
It's,
that became a collective
look,
mage.
a lot of worms, a lot of midichlorians, yada yada yada.
I
The
can
thing is,
still
each
see...
worm only gets one.
Right.
So they gotta work.
But as a group, they have a lot. It's a lot of force.
I could see that this like fatty like worm on the bottom. I could see that it is kind of like stuck there and it's trying to figure out a way to get out. Maybe. Which is why the cultists follow it and are like giving it stuff for it to kind of come back. So
The
They,
cultists
like,
are just trying to
serve-
build a staircase.
they serve this worm thing, they feed it,
It's like-
and they like
It's like
do other
we
stuff.
can like take you out like one bucket of worms at a time, and it's like, no, I cannot be separated from my mass.
I must stay together. If we separate, then I no
It
longer exist.
must be all the bucket or none of the bucket. It's a lot of bucket. We're gonna have to find a different way.
Can
But
we install
importantly,
an elevator here?
so speaking along those lines, though, Fia, you have selected number 8. What do the inhabitants of the dungeon want, and what have they done? So you have several inhabitants to choose from. Of course, you have your cultists, you have your weird worm monster, you have your Flump family, and your random lost traveler all wandering around down here. What do they want? What do each of them want, collectively want? I don't know. What's going on with them all?
Actually, up to this point, we have actually answered that question entirely. Maybe not for the worm mage themselves, or the cult, but I think like their minor goal within this specific location is to translate the ancient squiggly texts that are found.
Unlock the great
around
worm
this-
lore.
Exactly. And they can only get so far before they completely fail second grade and they can't translate any further.
Because it's in cursive.
Yes, because it is canonically in cursive and lacks very important consonants. And would it lack any vowels?
E
Are
maybe.
we-
Well, no, because lowercase
No.
e is acceptable, I would think.
Yeah, you can make the top part more of
Even
a circle.
Maybe
the
I.
A is acceptable.
I might be a problem.
I would
I-
definitely be very, very difficult.
T
But it
would
is
still be a
cursive.
problem.
It is true. Cursive lets you get away with a lot of letters.
Yeah. Maybe you gotta just narrow it down to like a specific brand of cursive,
Maybe.
and some of the stuff in that font is just real wacky.
Incomprehensible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Just read up on the Declaration of Independence. It'll work. It'll be fine. It'll go through. It'll be great.
Thomas Jefferson, the Worm Lord.
That's the sacred name.
Thomas
Except-
Worminson.
You can't use T, so it's Thomas.
Thomas Jefferson.
Yamas.
Yamas.
Yamas. Anyway, so the cultists are here to get the sacred worm lore for whatever reason.
They're here to learn more about their culture. That is worm culture, apparently. And I guess the adventurer, I don't think that he got here on purpose. I think he might have been like what instigated the crack up on the surface. He might have been the first one to fall through, and then other people may have fallen in after him.
The crazy guy.
Yeah.
So is he like a prospector, or something that that accidentally himself into this dungeon?
Yeah, I'm seeing something kind of like that, just like a little like out of his mind, old man.
Air of the groove.
So, is there a particular reason he can't get out? Is it just like he needs a rope and the cultists won't give him one?
No.
Because like obviously the cultists should be able to get in and out, right? If they want. So are they just
the
like
cultists-
jerking him around and are like, well, when we leave, you can leave, but they're not leaving for like months?
And when they do leave, they don't tell him. They're just like, "Oh, you missed it."
Like
Maybe
dangling
next
a
time.
string. Like dangling a string from like, whoop, oh, you almost got it.
Yeah, so
I
why
imagine-
can't he leave?
I imagine the way that the cultists are able to exit to the surface. They've been learning the way of the worm for quite some time, so they've probably got a better grasp of like
Oh, do they?
how to ascend.
Oh, do they have
using
some
the
kind of like worm transformation power where instead of turning into like a bat or something, they just turn into like worms?
Possibly, or maybe like they have somehow developed the capability to just like fully gelatinize their bones on their fingertips and
Oh,
just
and they
develop
just like stretch up.
maybe like lizard fingers or something where they just grab and go up.
Oh, okay, but he doesn't have that power, so
No, because
so
he's
he's just stuck here.
for whatever reason this guy's anti-worm.
I mean, there could be that where like he's been trying to get out, but like that like ancient worm thing down there has been like slowly trickling mind control. So every time he gets close to the exit, he can't leave. So he just kind of forgets and goes back.
So is the worms just being mean to him? Like, do they
Yeah,
want something
yeah.
from him?
Maybe
probably-
maybe they're trying to recruit him. They've been trying to recruit
they're-
him for so long, but he's just
they're
been
either-
so resistant to it.
Okay.
They're either trying to recruit him, or maybe they're gonna like possess his body.
Does the worm things does the
Maybe he'll
worm
be the
pile want his
sacrifice.
body for parts?
Maybe, or maybe he's going to be
maybe
some
they need
kind
a
of
skeletal
sacred
structure
sacrifice.
to inhabit
Yeah,
to make
as
that
the shell.
to remind you.
Ooh.
Maybe they just need the skeletal structure of a humanoid to kind of pile on to make that that form.
Yeah.
And the
But he
cultists are like,
resists it.
we're not interested, but thanks.
Listen, how about we get you one of those? So long as
just
you
like-
pinky promise that you won't do it to us.
but for
They're
some
like-
reason it has to be a willing thing. So like if it's just trying to make the crazy guy more willing over time.
Oh yes, Lord, Worm Lord, what must we need? I need a body.
Not it.
None of us.
Not-
Not of us.
Not
Nose
it.
goes. Nose goes. We'll go find somebody for you.
We'll go find you someone who is not immediately
Us.
gelatinous.
All right. And what do why are the flumps still here?
It's cheap real estate. It's a lot of...
It's free real estate.
They just like the area. There's salt, there's weird texts.
Sure, there are some cultists, but like,
But where aren't there
If-
cultists, honestly?
yeah, just like
Just some horrible.
I'm just
neighbors
imagining a
sometimes.
flump real estate agent just like touring them through the caves hundreds of years ago, and then like the cultists move in, and just like
This neighborhood
place
has
wasn't-
just gone to
it's not what it used to be, you know.
No, I could see them that it's just their natural habitat, and then that's just they just kind of found their own spot, and the cultists are like, we don't mess with those things.
being
Because-
being like lawful good. Well, I guess again their alignment doesn't particularly matter, but being relatively good psychic creatures. When the worms kind of like psychic at them, they're like, no, we're actually capable of resisting you. Thanks.
That
Just
or
like,
like
please stop.
that, or they just
Jeez.
watched one of them like just eat an
Can
entire.
you put me on
body,
your
and
do
they're
not
like, "We're
call list?
I could see it too, where they're just the cultists are just like, we're not gonna mess with them. Why? Did you literally just not see them eat an entire body in like one swallow? We're not gonna mess with those. Like
Pretty
that,
sure one of them broke their
Worms.
entire hand to climb out of here. We know that normal people don't do that, so we're just gonna stay back.
Okay, so the Flumps just like the area, but maybe not the neighbors.
Yeah. They don't have glowing reviews of their neighbors, but they sure do love their salt.
Fair enough. Any other? What has the? What have each of the groups particularly done of note recently? That may inform our eventual why our plot hook.
Flumps just got a brand new couch, and they remodeled their kitchen.
and a whole new salt lick.
Whole new salt. That big rock that's over there. The Flumps love it.
Yeah, it's great. It's perfect.
It's a
The kids
weird
love it.
bluish colored salt. It's strange, but it's tasty.
Yeah, it's it's got like a savoriness to
Right.
the salt.
It's got that umami.
Umami salt. Yes, exactly. I imagine the cultists, something that they've done of interest within recent times, which I guess would probably just be enough to get the attention of some nearby, like, townsfolk or whoever is even vaguely aware of this cave-in. Maybe they've been, like, overstepping or just, like, squiggling around the wrong parts of town. Maybe they've dragged off, like, a cat or a dog or two, and they're gradually taking more and more from the surface world and dragging it back down to offer to their squiggly deity.
Okay. All right. So with all that in mind, the main treasure of the room with the weird squiggly texts.
Certificate of Cursive Mastery.
Gotta have the wizard that's trained in that language.
Let's see. I like the idea of an interesting book because we're doing the squiggly texts, and there are some options. The very rare wondrous item, the Tome of Clear Thought, is I think a good choice, especially if it is written in the squiggly text. So once you figure it out, that's how you are able to like use the tome.
Yes.
There's just so much squiggle, it just completely blanks your mind.
Now, according to the information here on the D&D Beyonds, this book contains memory and logic exercises, and its words are charged with magic. If you spend 48 hours over a period of 6 days studying the book's contents and practicing its guidelines, your intelligence increases by 2, as does your maximum for that score. And then it loses all of its magic, and but regains it in a century. So it's been down here for like 2 centuries, so it's back. It's clearly functional again for one use for the next 100 years or so.
It just like when it's done and it needs to be burnt up, like it just turns into a bunch of worms. You have to keep them together, and then eventually it just shifts back into a. That sounds so gross.
That does sound gross.
You gotta read it in like a fish tank.
Oh.
When it falls apart.
Just falls into worms and crawls into the earth, never to be seen again for the next 100 years.
Somehow
until it resurfaces again somewhere else in a cave somewhere.
That it manages to crawl all the way back to the original spot
Well, it's got 100 years, so I guess that's
Yeah.
doable.
Got plenty of time.
It just keeps coming back here every 100 years, resealing itself. But yeah, no,
Unless you put it
I
in
think-
like a plastic baggie.
Yeah, no, I think with our word puzzle and a lot of like mental powers that we are kind of throwing around down here, I like the idea of a some kind of maybe stat boosting tome that the party doesn't maybe get to use immediately. This does require like effectively a week's worth of study and effort put in to get that bonus. You don't just open it up and be like, I've got the bonus, I could do the things.
It's
But
also sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's also pretty good to try and push this in at the start of an adventure, and then you can have a bunch of encounters or interactions taking place over a short period of time, just to like fill up the space of the week.
Right.
And then by the end of it,
Maybe
then they would
maybe
be able
the
to have the stat
cultists
bonus.
wanted that book and
they-
couldn't figure out how to open the thing because they never passed second grade English, and now that you have it, the other members of this cult are looking for you, and you have to get it studied to get it used, but like a lot can happen in 6 days. Maybe you don't make it all the way through all of your study and it gets interrupted.
Yeah.
And you have to start all over again. And the cult steals the book and you have to go steal it back. And it becomes like the weird adventure MacGuffin for a little while.
Like,
You gotta be super. You gotta be super paranoid. There could be worms around any corner.
And it does become a little bit of a time clock. So like let's say the adventurers are using it and they're gonna their mage is like, oh man, I'm like 2 days away from having ultimate power, and then the cult steals it, and then you're like, well crap, we have to get it back within 6 days or else it's gone. Like we can't like dilly dally on this one. We have to like really go find it.
We gotta go get this book back, otherwise they're gonna know how to write in cursive.
Right, but yeah, like you could do stuff like that to put the party on more of a timetable where they can't just be like, well, we'll figure it out, but maybe we'll go do this other thing first, or maybe it's like, no, you can do that, but maybe they'll have used the book and you'll be out those 2 int points for the next 100 years.
Yeah.
So
I
it's
know
one of
a
those
lot of
things you can
people that
just
would be
dangle
like-
in front of the party's intelligence-based characters and be like, don't you want your 2 int points?
It's like they're just like sweat drop.
You worked
Eat it.
really hard to get them. I would hate for the cult to get them because you waited around to get your spell slots back.
Do you know how quickly 500 worms can attune to a book that is made of also 500 worms? Pretty quickly.
If you ask me. Pretty quickly.
But yeah, so stuff like that where if you want you could have it as just a simple treasure to reward the party for doing some stuff, and it is a more permanent buff that can't really be taken away once it has been fully acquired, because it's an actual stat buff that just sticks with the character. But at the same time, if you want to play cat and mouse with it for a little bit, that just drives the story forward. So that's
I actually recently did that with my last game yesterday. They did a little cat and mouse. The thieves managed to steal something, so now they're more than likely going to help get it back because it's linked to something in the storyline. So they get to play a little cat and mouse with it.
That's cool. Well, Sasha, I believe that brings us to our final choice here. Number 10, the why. What is the plot hook that gets the party here?
So let's say the party ends up in a desert oasis, pretty much. Salt area.
Right.
And
Salt flats.
yes, they end up
Utah.
hearing
They end up in
about-
Utah.
Oh God, no.
And they're in Salt Lake City.
There's
But,
like no booze here.
So they
they
end up
immediately
going-
leave. There's no booze.
And I
can't-
would think
can't
that
stay.
when they go into they're kind of like, oh man, this is an oasis. This looks like a paradise. This looks so good. And then they're like, well, it used to be like that until the worm cultists showed up. They're like, the what?
Until then,
The
worm
worm
folk.
cultists.
Worm
and
folk.
like they kind of get in there and they said, but rumor has it that where the cultists are, there's treasure there. And
They're
there's,
protecting
like,
something.
There's stuff. They're protecting something. There's like valuable stuff in there. And really, they go in there and there's not a whole lot of value because it's already been ransacked before, and obviously from dead people from previous adventures and stuff. But it's like there's a whole like big rumor about it and all this stuff, and so people kind of whisper about it. Then it's like, what do you mean the squiggly? What's going on with the squiggles? And so there's
What does
some
that
of
even
this
mean?
stuff because it could have been like this oasis city used to be a much bigger city, but it got smaller over time, and it has some light ancient writing on some of the older like buildings that no longer function. They're like, yeah, we have ruins around here, and then they can kind of investigate a little bit of the squiggles, and they're like, damn, I didn't pass second grade. I don't understand what this is saying.
The wizard casts comprehend languages and like, this isn't words. I don't know this.
Everything here is backwards and uncomfortable, and I don't like it, and I refuse to believe it.
But I can see how it would lure them with not only treasure, but ancient knowledge and the possibility of figuring out some lore and or dealing with trouble to receive an extra reward after they've gone through it. So like going back to the city and being like, hey, thanks for taking care of that colt. Here's like a diamond or whatever. Like something like that.
Here's a really shiny palm frond.
And you get to pet my cat.
It's a very special cat.
The cat speaks cursive.
The cat is
The cat is actually some kind of weird druid.
Dun dun dun.
It's a worm druid from the ancient religions.
the cat is secretly a spy
It's
for
a
the
worm
big
druid.
bad evil guy.
It's a worm druid.
It's like what? It's a swarm druid who can transform into worms sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds horrible.
The last
funny.
the last of a line of ancient worshippers of the original worm.
The party will sometimes see the cat while they're talking about important stuff, and then the cat will turn the corner, they'll check up on the cat, and they'll just see like a single worm like squiggling out the door.
And as a wonderful plot twist, that druid has read that book.
Oh, like hundreds
A
of years
century
ago.
ago.
It's an
Yeah.
immortal. It's an immortal druid or some kind of
Yes.
elf that lives forever.
Timeless body.
It's cursed into cat form, but also likes to be worms sometimes.
Yes.
Maybe it's Mabel.
And it would just be like, yeah, then understand, like, once that person reads that book for, like, that intelligence score, they should be able to understand squiggle, which would just be the cursive. So then they can look at that druid cat and just, they'd be able to talk to them freely. Because they read the book. Squiggle, 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 squiggle. Yeah, squiggly, squig, squiggle, squiggle.
So there's a long-lived
Okay, Crunk.
swarm druid of some kind in the form of a cat.
Maybe that's the only way to learn the squiggle speak nowadays, because all other like teaching formats have been destroyed, so you have to read the book in order to have access to it. And that's
then
why
once-
it's so limited.
And once the book is read,
It turns into worms for 100 years.
Yeah.
and it disappears. You lose a worm, you lose like a letter. Crap.
worm funerals must be absolutely insane based off
Oh.
of the knowledge they have. Just like we've lost a scholar on this day.
They just get Viking funerals. Except in sand.
It's just like in the middle of like a pit of quicksand. They have like a tiny boat, a singular worm laid across it, and then they shoot a match at it.
But only when the rains come and flood the salt flats. So that the boat will float across the salt flats.
I mean, they don't even need a boat because of how the way salt works in water. With enough salt, you can literally
Just put down like a
balance
little
anything.
leaf and like lay the worm on.
Yeah.
And it floats away.
Yeah. And then they set it on fire.
I love that we've gone so in depth with this.
With this
this
worm
dungeon that
religion, this worm culture.
With this dungeon, worm religion, worm culture, we've gone into worm funerals.
See, and this is where your D&D party will take you if you let them.
And the D&D
Maybe at
party
one
is
point,
like,
maybe at one point the party encounters like either one or like a small amalgamation of worms that are like, I do not believe in the prophecies of the greater worm god.
I mean,
but
maybe
then, like,
that's this collection of worms in the husk. It's an apostate worm collective.
possibly. But if like that amalgamation of worms perishes, or there's an instance where even just one of the worms perish, the party gets to attend a worm
A worm
funeral.
funeral.
oh my god.
All right. Well, it looks like we have developed a dungeon. It turned out in a way that I did not expect, but love entirely.
The pure amount of silliness to it with the actual genuine sincerity of it is
Right.
also really
And there's a lot of body horror hiding in here. Like these
Yes.
worms are very dangerous monsters.
It sound absolutely terrifying.
All of this because the moment you said desert and salt flats, I immediately thought of Tremors.
Oh, is that how this happened?
Yeah.
I had thought about a dried out ocean, so my brain went to like undead sea creatures that have dried up and are trying to eat what
Or
they
like
can.
mummified sea creature monsters?
Yeah, like a weird, like instead of that shell that's on the bottom of what that is, my brain went to like a siren that's barely on its last limb, and it comes back and it just eats.
Yeah, that was definitely a fallback that I'd considered, where like perhaps that husk at the bottom could have been like instead of a bug or a beetle-like entity, could have been it could have been like a whale skeleton
Mm-hmm.
just sitting down there,
Chilling.
just vibing.
But yeah, so we have
When I'm dead tired.
a relatively functional dungeon, arguably very scalable, because the party could fight the flumps. They're only like CR 1/8, so I mean they're kind of pushovers at most levels. The family could be bigger to make it slightly more difficult. You could kind of bump the cultists up from a single to a double to a triumvirate to a quadrant to a penta something.
Don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, I know. Too many collectives. But anyway, you could up the number of cultists based, or make the cultists just stronger, and the star spawn already stupidly a strong monster, so you're gonna have to scale it down. But you could scale it down to it needs a couple of mind powers, and it needs to shoot some kind of a magical bolt at something. That's about all it really needs. And depending on how strong your party is will determine how strong the magical bolts are, how resistant it is to magic, and what other telepathy powers it has to dominate or hurt your party. But I don't foresee that being too hard for most people. You just have to kind of get the right feel for the level range that you're aiming for, more than anything else. And I do like that we got a couple of NPC slash monsters to run across, like the crazy wandering hermit could be something you have to fight if you're not, if the party is feeling weirdly violent or not understanding that this person is just insane. And the stat blocks for those are pretty easy. You just throw like a thug in there, or maybe he's some kind of weird like crazy magician or something.
Would you like to buy my snake oil?
Right. Again, the flumps, you could fight them or they could be friends. They're just here to live here. They're not particularly aligned to the cultists in any real way, other than they share living space with them. Probably don't want to be on the cultist side, but weirdly I could see the party, especially if it's like a low-level party or at that level range that somebody wants to take an extra level in like Star Pact Warlock, doing a pact with the worms, and siding with them for some reason might be an interesting option if fighting it becomes a little too party wipey by accident. If the worms demand like some kind of almost like a devil's bargain from like the Avernus books, but maybe a little more weird.
You have to gelatinize all of the bones in your body.
But I need those to walk.
You're gonna become so very squiggly.
So squiggly.
I see the worms that whenever it inhabits somebody's body, they just kind of like, like they can't walk. Straight is just not in their definition.
Just turn one of the party members into like a Venom scenario where he's just got worms inside of him.
Yeah.
They constantly like talk behind them, give them powers.
And they're like, "Hey, buddy, how are you doing back there?" And they just hear, "There are worms in me." Ah, it's great, buddy.
That's where the inflatable men outside of car dealerships come in.
Yeah.
when the worm inhabits you to cast spells through you, you just wave your hands in the air as an action, and magic happens.
And you have to like you do that, and like your fingers also kind of like wiggle and.
After a certain point, where you've gained enough levels as a spellcaster with the worms, all of your spells don't require verbal or.
It's just somatic only. Everything is somatic components.
Meanwhile, is like a downfall. It's like a tapeworm, and like your body is just like degrading away.
Alternatively, slowly your body is just becoming worms.
Right.
Yep,
you're over time just becoming a star spawn larva mage.
Maybe that's like maybe that's a cultist goal. Like they want to inhibit the worms, so then that way they can like that and be the next like full host to it.
But it takes a long time, so you're catching them like mid process.
And you keep killing them, and they're like, "Would you stop? We're trying to do this thing. Can you stop?"
Just trying to have no bones.
We just want ultimate power. Ultimate worm power.
It brings new meaning to the question, would you love me if I was a worm?
Would you still love me if I was a worm?
Perhaps.
The worm looks, yes.
Naturally.
Yes, I have all of these things written down, and I think I'll even toss them up on our Discord at some point just to memorialize what happened here this evening.
Fantastic.
And later,
so everybody can see how unhinged this guy.
And later for my reference, because I am 100% doing this at like a convention someday. We're just gonna do Worm Dungeon.
I need to go to that one so I can
Gonna
be
be-
in that game.
Oh my
Please
god.
invite me. I want to make a character now that's just secretly
I'll
one
make
big
dice.
worm.
Just secretly one big worm.
Oh my god, that'll be fantastic.
But for those of you listening, probably later on the YouTubes and the whatnots, this is how you take a random dungeon map off the internet, and you can either do this by yourself, which is pretty linear, and you can kind of work it out as you go, but you're pretty stuck with the line of thought you have in mind, or you can get some friends together. And oh my god, you can turn into a giant worm dungeon with worm cultists and flumps with furniture and, all these things that wouldn't normally happen.
You can't forget the remodeled kitchen.
Right.
Very important.
Salt,
Dad
salt
Flump made
flat,
sure.
pit traps that you have to do the worm across in order to properly traverse, because I would not have come up with that. On my lonesome, that would not have crossed my mind at all, and I'm happy that we got there together.
Paladin, I'm not doing it.
You can't make me.
I am not going to degrade myself. Well, it's either that or falling into the hole. What do you prefer?
Then I will die.
Just looks you
It's like,
straight
I
in the
will die.
eyes
Look at my
and
legs.
walks into the hole.
Like complete eye contact. Slowly sinks down. And then someone else, I guess we'll go get him.
Ridiculous. But yeah, so this is how you can develop a dungeon. And again, you're only really answering 5 real questions. Your who's, your what's, your when's, your where's, your why's. Some of those you have to answer multiple times to kind of fill the dungeon out, but honestly, it's fine. Now, we only really threw in like the main treasure, which was the tome, but arguably anywhere in the dungeon where you can run across adversity, treasure can be sprinkled in. As we were saying with the salt flat pit traps, there could be failed adventurers down there, and failed adventurers have things in their pockets, or maybe the flumps have a collection of like weird gemstones that weren't salt. So when they licked the walls enough, like gemstones fell out, and they've just been putting them in a pile because they don't eat gemstones, but they look pretty.
They don't eat the gemstones.
Or
And the cultists try to get near them, but because they're in their territory, they're like, we're just not gonna mess with these things.
right. Or funny thing about the flumps, their defensive mechanism is effectively a stink cloud. They shoot like almost like a squid spray of like stinking gas at you.
Made me ink.
But or maybe the crazy hermit has kind of like a little area set up that he's been kind of like living in and scrounging stuff, remains that the cultists haven't wanted or whatever, where you can sprinkle some treasure. Trinket tables are your friends. Any trinket table from any source.
I need to start doing that.
Anytime you want to be like, man, I want to give my party treasure, or man, my party's really fishing for some treasure, but I don't really want to give them gold or silver or, magic items, give them a trinket. Players go crazy for trinkets. Because it's a cool, weird thing. It may become plot relevant, it may not. I ran an adventure once where I gave as a trinket to a party, like the very first dungeon that the party went on was just populated by like small amounts of coinage and trinkets. And the party members got their like one of them got their hands on the like glass orb with weird alchemical runes like carved in it, and they decided that they were going to spend like the next 4 or 5 character levels studying that orb, trying to figure out like what secrets it unlocked. And I'm like, I don't know, it's a trinket. but
Ah,
I worked something out for them because they put the effort into it because they liked it so much. So yeah, just give your party trinkets sometimes. You'd be
I've
surprised
done
where that
a
will
little
take you.
bit. I've done that a little bit. It's fun. I haven't rewarded them so much because I just hadn't thought about it. But they'll get there eventually. They haven't gone into a dungeon, so I'm actually intending on that for if they choose to go after this gang, which is called the Tiny Hand. And it's pretty much a group. It's like a gang that's all small size creatures, and their symbol is a handprint that's made up of different small hands all together. Like it's a bunch of handprints that shape into a giant hand, and they're called the Tiny Hand. Fantastic. My brain is nuts.
I'm with you.
With our powers combined, we made a really cool dungeon tonight. So I'm
Yes,
excited.
that was fun.
Yeah.
I hope I'm able to be the player when you run that game. I'm gonna be like, oh my god, it's this one.
I mean, good news for you. You live like 30 minutes away from me, so
Yeah.
at some point, I'm just gonna run a one shot at the shop, and this will probably be in the running.
I want to so bad.
It'll be great.
It'll be a blast.
But yeah, so I think that's a good run for our tavern talk this evening. Does anyone have any last thoughts before we kind of close it down? Any parts of the dungeon that really stuck out to you that you're gonna treasure for a while?
I'm gonna treasure the whole thing.
It's
but-
gonna be hard to move on from the worm folk.
Worm folk.
And also, in general, doing the worm to traverse unstable flooring.
That's amazing, and it adds such a unique flair because you have player characters who are like, I'm not gonna do that. That's stupid, and then you have characters that are just like, well, here we go.
Like dexterity-based characters who were practically born to do the worm.
Right, and it's a fun traversal mechanic that never comes up, right? Like
This character's so wormable.
You always have those dex-based characters who are like, "Hey, I want to do some cool acrobatics thing to get across this like pit area or past this trap," and you're like, "All right, roll some dice." But now you're gonna be like, "You'll have to do the worm."
And the thing is, they'll be the ones putting in the work because a lot of the time the other characters may not even be able to do it.
Right.
Yep. Or their dice are like low enough, or like if they do an acrobatics check and they roll like super low, that there's a chance that they may not actually traverse properly and might fall because they don't do it right. That would be a
I
fun
said
one.
worm, not dead fish.
You're gonna get it right.
If they do it poorly enough, there's the chance they tweak out their back and they can't do it again.
Right. No, the traversal mechanic I really like. That's pretty cool. I also like the idea. One of my favorites that I enjoy. So when I grabbed this dungeon, I of course saw that there was a monster at the bottom, and I was like, well, maybe that'll be like some kind of insect monster or demon or dire whatever summoned thing that the actual big bad kind of controls or whatever. But the fact that it is just a hollow husk filled with worms from the stars definitely puts a spin on it that I did not expect, and I like that because it gives the worms kind of like an armor class that they wouldn't normally have. And they can like peek out the little holes along the side and like shoot lasers at you or
It's a worm tank.
right. So yeah, I do appreciate that. That was a good ad. I like I like that as a monster option that I did not see when I originally picked this dungeon as an option.
Yeah, as the husk.
Yeah, the husk.
Yeah.
The fact that it is just a husk and the monster is actually inside it.
Yes. I thought that was really fun because I was like, oh, it's just a husk? Oh, yeah, something's just totally in it.
It could also mean that the adventurers get like a very unexpected surprise from
Right.
Uh-huh.
like
It's a
there's an
twist.
ingrained surprise round in there because they're not going to anticipate a serious threat from something that you can establish like, yeah, that's just a corpse.
Oh yeah,
And
because it looks like an old fossilized shell of a monster.
And it's using some kind of mind stuff, so it's like people are like randomly like, huh, I need you to make a will save. And then you make passes, you're like, where's it coming from? You don't know. Kind of weird. So like it's a good way to kind of bring players alarm, but at the same time confuse them where they don't know what's going to happen. Those ones are always fun.
But yeah, no, I like that. That was a good add-on to this dungeon that I really appreciated. All right. So with that aside, we have created a dungeon, made it populated with fun things, added a plot hook. If any of you watching this later on the YouTube would like to run this dungeon, good news. I have been slowly scrolling all of our choices here in the middle section for you to read. Or you can just go back and listen to it as we developed it because that was fun to do. And rewatches are always fun on YouTube, as they say. So the dungeon map will be, of course, here on the YouTube as well for you to look at. Or if you would like to acquire it, good news. It is, in fact, currently posted on our Discord, and you can get to it by following the link below in our informational section. So you can join us on the Discord, have fun with us, talk about stuff. We have other tavern talk ideas upcoming, but we always take suggestions. So if you're in the Discord, you can suggest tavern talk subjects. Theoretically, if you're interested in talking with us on Tavern Talk, all you need to do is be in the Discord and be available. We're always looking for people to come hang out with us and do stuff. If you'd like to see kind of more about this particular dungeon or just chat with us about it, you could do that there. Otherwise, you can find us on the Twitches, which you're here for, or the Twitters, or the TikToks, or the Instagrams. I think that's all of the relevant social medias. There are maybe more. It's hard to say anymore. There's a lot of social media in this world. But other than that, thanks for joining us this evening. And I look forward to episode 3 next month. Generally, we've decided that this is going to be a monthly at the moment, probably third Tuesday of every month going forward unless something changes. It'll be kind of exciting to see what we come up with for episode 3, but we got a whole month to think about it. And again, if you come join us on the Discord, we're taking suggestions. So with that ado, we will see you all later. Thanks for joining us on Tavern Talk. Goodbye.
Bye.